Welcome to Penny for Your Shots, Conversations and Cocktails with Brilliant Women, the podcast where we uncork the stories and insights of exceptional female leaders from all walks of life. Our goal is to serve up wisdom, tips, and inspiration, and to support each other in rediscovering ourselves and what sets our souls on fire. We'll also share personal memories, paired with friends and a favorite beverage. I'm your host, Penny Fitzgerald, and I believe that the best stories are served up over a glass of wine or a cocktail. So grab a glass, get comfy, and let's pour ourselves into Penny for Your Shots. Victoria Chai, owner of Chai Connections Coaching and Consulting, is a communications coach who teaches and mentors people in developing better communication skills that lead to greater confidence. She discusses how she came to her career and some interesting twists and turns as she navigated cultural differences while in Japan. Victoria and I discuss how she works predominantly with female entrepreneurs too, and that they often have a fear holding them back. I hear this over and over again in my conversations. We don't pursue a dream or don't make the progress we'd like because we're afraid. Afraid of looking or sounding stupid, or we don't like the sound of our own voice, or the way we look on camera. We are our own worst critics. Would you talk to your bestie the way you talk to or think about yourself? I've heard some even say, why would anyone want to hear my opinion or ideas? This absolutely breaks my heart. Your story is worth telling. You're worth listening to. You matter. Victoria's mission is to help you find your authentic voice so you can communicate more effectively and gain confidence. I'm all for it. Here is Victoria Chai.
Hi, Penny.
Victoria, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. I love your profile picture.
Thank you. It's a picture my husband took of me.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
At the beach.
At the beach. I love the beach.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thanks
have
for
you?
joining me this morning.
Oh, my pleasure. What a joy. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So for my listeners, I just met you not too long ago, a few weeks ago at a Sassy Sisters meeting
Yes.
and got to know you just a little bit, but tell our listeners what's your business? What do you do?
Oh, okay, sure. I am a communications coach and I work predominantly with female entrepreneurs, sorry, wrong pronunciation, entrepreneurs, to find their authentic voice and communicate with confidence.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. And I heard you speak at one of our meetings, and your background story is really interesting. You came about, well, tell us, how did you find your job, or how did it find you?
How did my job in terms of my coaching or my teaching?
Your coaching, you had an interesting story about your background, about how you were speaking at a group and had a little bit of a learning experience that
Yes. Well, I think we're going way back to when I lived in Japan. I'm guessing that's what you're talking about.
yes.
Yeah. So when I was in college, my major was Japanese language and linguistics. So I went to Japan for a year to study abroad. And then I came back and got a teaching, after finishing my degree, I got a teaching position in Japan. And one of the first days I ever taught, they put me in front of a classroom, which I was okay with. I wasn't a great public speaker, but I figured, students, I probably know more than them. And since I'm teaching English, I definitely know more than them. What I didn't know was that everybody would be in the back of the room, the principal, the vice principal, the head teacher, the mayor of the town. And I thought I was going to pass out. And what I realized was, while I knew things, I wasn't really a great public speaker. And so what I did was I just kind of leaned up against the podium and stood there, and people thought, oh, she's so cool. And I thought, yes, I'm going to drop to my face if I step away from this. And I realized that my public speaking skills were going to need a lot of work. And so I started my adventure on learning about that. One thing I did learn from that is most nervousness is not visible. Unless you tell people you're nervous, they have no idea.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. And kind of like most things, the more you practice it, the better you get.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think in terms of practice, when I think about being a good speaker of any kind, whether it's just like with you and I, think about how children learn. They just speak and speak and speak, and they don't perceive it as a formal thing. And I think one of the ways that when I work with people, which I didn't know when I was learning, is that these are all muscles, right? So they have to be used, just like if you're going to learn how to run or do gymnastics or use a computer, right? It's all muscle memory. And so one of the things I learned is that if we look at it as an experimental fun process, so let's say, Penny, I'm going to ask you to present at my next networking meeting, and I want you to present not just about, your area of expertise, but I also want you to add in the aspect of being an entrepreneur. And so I know you're, penny for your shots. I know that's your area of expertise, that's your sweet spot, but maybe discussing being an entrepreneur isn't. So what I might ask you to do as a client, I would say, Penny, I want you to put out your bullet points of what you think is connected to your area of expertise and being an entrepreneur and helping other entrepreneurs. And then I would say, just go talk to anybody who will listen to you about this, your friends, your family, strangers in the supermarket. Literally just strike a conversation, because the more you use the muscles in an informal way, the
Mm,
easier it will be to use them in a formal way.
nice. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah, so many things that to us are, like the back of the hand, and you take them for granted because it's what you do. It's what you've grown up doing. You've learned it, our language, the skills
Yes.
that we have, the way we use our speech patterns. Yeah, but yeah, it's learning a new skill.
Right. But not seeing it as something that's horrifying and intimidating. I mean, studies,
Right.
most people would rather die than go to give a speech. I hear this a lot.
I'm sure. I've heard that too. It's hard for me to relate to because I love to talk. I love sharing stories and love to be entertaining, I guess. I don't know. I love to bring joy.
Well, I think a lot of people would love to bring joy and are just have this kind of block about what it
Yeah.
means to be in front of an audience, whether it's on a podcast like this or
Uh-huh.
in front of an audience as I did, which was a small audience at Sassy Sisters, or in front of a giant audience. For example, I was
Right.
telling you at that presentation, I ended up doing a debate in front of like 300 people and didn't realize it would be televised. Right? And so to get to the level where you're comfortable in all different kinds of situations, it really is the muscle memory. It's also about understanding there is no perfect spoken experience. So whether we're doing a podcast, just before I made a mistake, right? Oh, pronunciation. Sometimes I get the
Oh.
pronunciation of words wrong. Sometimes I stop, I get stuck, I lose my train of thought. These are all
Hmm.
part of what makes us beautifully human,
Hmm.
wonderfully unique, and embracing that instead of saying, oh, I shouldn't make a mistake. If you're not making mistakes, you're a robot.
Yeah. 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 No perfect speaking experience, but no perfect experience, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I heard something a while back, and it makes so much sense to me that, when you think about movies that you watch or television shows that have a plot, a storyline, even in a book, you, if there's a perfect character, they're universally despised.
It's very interesting that you say that, because when I worked as a college professor, I used to talk about this idea of our presenting self, right?
Uh-huh.
And particularly with Zoom, one of the difficulties is we can see ourselves on camera. I shut my own view off so I don't see myself.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
we become hypercritical of ourselves. And yet they did a study, I want to say in the 80s, where they took, if you put a line down your face,
Uh-huh.
you have your ears are different heights, your eyes are different sizes, we're
Oh,
all a
yes.
little bit asymmetrical. And when you take one half and you mirror it and make the face perfect, people are
Hmm.
uncomfortable with it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We're
I believe
uncomfortable with
that.
imperfection. Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting too. We are our own worst critics. We don't like to see ourselves on camera. We don't like to hear our own voice.
right. And
But
the other thing, oh, sorry.
no, that's okay. I was just going to add, if it's what you have to say that can lift others up that becomes important. If you can focus on that and how you're serving someone. One thing I hear from female entrepreneurs all the time is that they don't want to feel salesy. They don't want to bug their friends and family, and they don't want to hustle and grind for sales. They may have received some bad advice telling them to post more on social media. So they post and they post and they post. And that doesn't feel good. So they either stop, are inconsistent, or don't convey the right message. I'm Penny Fitzgerald, and I've been training women entrepreneurs for more than 18 years, leading one of the top 3 direct selling teams in my former company. And now I'm providing my proven language, systems, and tools that will help you serve your customers rather than feel like you're selling or like you're constantly working. I've put together a 3-day free live event to teach female entrepreneurs a radically different way of running your business, so it's not running you. A way of doing business that's in service of others, one you can be proud of, where your customers will love you, and one that helps you reach your goals. I'm holding this event starting on Monday, January 6th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time via Zoom. You can save your spot by going to my website. That's pennyforyourshots.com and click the green button at the top labeled Save My Spot. Or just text the word SERVE to 319-448-3545 and I'll text you back that direct link. This course is normally $297, but I'm offering it to you for free. Don't miss your opportunity to shift your business from selling to serving. I hope you'll join me, and I can't wait to toast to your success. Cheers.
And you're serving them by making mistakes and being okay with it as well.
Right.
I find that when I'm working with a client or I'm working with my students at the college, when I make a mistake and I say, oh, there's my human showing, isn't that fun? So then when they have to get up in front of the class or they're working on their own stuff, they're like, they can roll with that. They're like, hey, I'm human, isn't that fun? And so when you, as a human being, model a behavior of acceptance of self and acceptance of them, you create such a beautiful climate and energy, a communicative climate, of a climate of humanity and just okayness is such a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's amazing because it just reminds me so much of very similar things that I teach in my classes too, is that, we don't have the answers. Nobody has all the answers. What works for me is going to work differently for someone else. And together we'll get messy because that's how we learn. That's how we grow. When we step out, take a new step in a new direction, we don't know where that's going to lead yet or how that's going to feel. It's scary because it's new. So of course it's going to be messy. Babies don't learn how to walk and just take off and go. We fall a lot.
We fall a lot. And the thing that happens, and this is something I've done a lot of research on because I think it's an important factor in our humanity, is when we get to a certain age, whatever that age is, we think we're supposed to be done and we're supposed to know. And it's that word should. I shouldn't make a mistake. I should be able to do this. I should. And I think anytime we use the word should, it's so punitive. And it leads us to an expectation that is not realizable. And so the best learners, when I think of myself as a learner, a lifelong learner, I'm still learning, is to have what we call the beginner mind and to say, you know what? Everything is part of my journey. And so if let's say I'm with you and we're talking about, I'm going to have a party and I'm looking for different cocktails. And one of the things you had asked me for this was, what's my favorite cocktail? And I said, I know what's in it, but I don't know what it's called. So I went online and I looked at what it was called because I don't know. I'm not an expert.
That's okay.
Right. And then if you were saying, which wine do you like? And I'm like, I know the label. I don't know how to say the name, and I'm like, I'm trying to look it up. And I'm thinking, you know what? I can't know all this. This is not my area of expertise. I'm a consumer. I'm not an expert. And to think we're going to be an expert at everything or we're going to be perfect at something is to leave us without the ability for experimentation.
Yes. Yeah. Without the ability to grow.
Yeah. And so when I think about, us as sisters, because we're sassy sisters, but we are
Yes.
sisters in life. And if we're going to uplift one another, we not only have to be accepting of others and their quirks and foibles, but our own as well.
Right.
And to see the humor in it, I told that story at the thing and I said, I had all these index cards. I had 20 some odd index cards. I dropped them and I had
Yeah.
not numbered them.
Yeah.
I'm on television. I'm in a giant auditorium. And all I can think is, well, that's not going to work. So I got up and I thought, well, some of this I remember, some of it I don't. I'm going to learn something and people will learn something,
Mm-hmm.
not to say that I wasn't nervous and sweating because I absolutely was, but I
Mm-hmm.
learned a lot from that. And anytime I have notes now, I always number my pages.
That's a good pro tip right there. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So you were in Japan, pivoting a little bit here. You were in Japan for how long were you there?
I was there 1 year as a student at a university. I lived in
Okay.
Nagoya, which is between Osaka and Tokyo. And then
Okay.
I was there for 3 years as a teacher in a
Fun.
tiny town with no train station where I lived. They gave me a house because they could. And next to my house, I was surrounded by rice paddies. And I rode a bicycle to
Oh.
work every day. And I'd get out and there'd be little tiny frogs on my handlebars and I'd pick
Oh,
them up and then I'd ride my bicycle to work. And, it was an amazing, wondrous experience.
I bet.
Um, and that opens your mind too, right? Because you're going to be
Right.
wrong even though I spoke Japanese before I went, I was not what they call, I wasn't
Not
bilingual. I was fluent, but not bilingual.
okay.
So I could have a conversation, but I
Uh-huh.
couldn't read a newspaper. I couldn't have a technical
Oh.
discussion. So over
Mm.
those 3 years, I became bilingual. But in that first year, I had a lot of misunderstandings.
Well, and it's not just the language, it's the culture too.
And language is culture. How we use language
Well,
is
yeah.
culture, right? And so
Uh-huh.
the idea of when I think about like our networking events here in the United States,
Mhm.
and then a networking event in Japan is very different,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, you mentioned the eye contact thing, right?
Yes, yes. So, well, not in a networking event at a party, it would be
Uh-huh.
different, but students wouldn't look at me because that would be rude.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk
So
about room for misunderstanding.
yes, and I find that when people who come here as immigrants or visitors,
Yeah.
internationals,
Hmm.
they're trying to use their best polite behavior with us, which we might perceive as the most impolite behavior.
Right.
And so
Right.
even as Americans, even here in Sarasota, in Florida, and certainly in New York, where I came from, you're meeting people from all over the world.
Right.
So instead of thinking, oh, they're rude, perhaps it might be in our
Mm.
best interest to think, I wonder what that means to them.
Yeah. To get curious and ask a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just be open-minded, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Not necessarily asking a question of them, but even of ourselves. Like, why am I
Yes.
reacting in this way?
Yes. And I understand this cultural mores. I mean, we often think in the United States, we expect 80 to 90% eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't have eye contact, we think one of several things. One, they're lying.
Yeah.
Two, they're shifty, they're sneaky.
Yeah.
Three, they aren't confident.
Yeah. Heard
Four,
that
they don't
too.
care. When in another
Wow.
culture, it's the most polite behavior you can have.
Wow. Yeah, that really shifts your mindset when you realize that.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So um you taught over in Japan and you were also a university professor here in the States?
Yes, yes. So I worked at Nassau Community College full time as a linguistics and communications professor. I retired from there almost 2 years ago, and that's when I started my own business
Oh,
because
nice.
when we had an opportunity to move to Sarasota, who could ever say no to that?
Right.
And I
Right.
thought, okay, this is my pivot time. This is when I'm going to take everything I know and create something that I love even more than teaching in the college because teaching in a college is wonderful and there's a lot of bureaucracy there.
Mm-hmm.
So while I'm learning a lot, and as a business owner, you have to learn a lot about things you never knew before. There is an incredible amount of freedom and experimentation and exploration that can happen. And
Yes.
even speaking of that, I had a workshop a month ago, and out of that, I came up with a new program because people said, "Hey, I'd like to learn this." And I thought, well, I wouldn't have that freedom at the college. So,
Right. Right.
so
You'd
this
have
is,
to run it by several people probably.
and the state of New York,
Oh my gosh.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's a
Uh,
great freedom.
that's true. Yeah. Being your own boss, owning your own company, being an entrepreneur, there's, it's risky. I mean, some people are afraid of that, but that freedom, there's nothing like it. And with action, when you take those actions, like you said, you had that course that you taught a month, or a workshop that you had a month ago, and it led to something new. So that action provided some clarity on what your people want and need.
Absolutely. And it's really fun because I'm meeting so many people. I've only been in Florida now, in Sarasota full time for about a little over a year.
Hmm.
And so I'm meeting so many people like you through networking events like Sassy Sisters. And I'm learning about what the culture here, because every state has its own culture, every
That's
city has its
right.
own culture, every group has its own culture. So I'm learning a lot about what those people's interests are and what they need and how I can serve in that way.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about what you're offering now. Like, what are some of the courses and workshops that you do?
Okay, so I held a workshop last month. This month in November, I'm holding a workshop on the 19th, which is next week at Fin and Tonic, which I'm going to do a little bit of the same and a little bit different. What I worked with those women on initially was their elevator pitch, because we have to introduce ourselves and it often feels awkward and we don't know what to say and to make it interesting, not just for others, but for ourselves. Because if you feel good about what you're saying, you're interesting then. If you're interested, you're interesting. If you're bored, you're boring.
Exactly. Right.
So I
Right.
switch it up. People think, oh, I have my phrase, I have my statement. Change it up, have fun with it, So I have them mess around with that. Then the next thing that I'm doing this coming next week is I'm not only going to work on their elevator pitch, I'm going to work on what we call their nonverbals and their paralanguage, volume, pitch, posture, eye contact, things like that. So I'm going to add that. And then in
Okay.
the following months for the rest of 2025, I've got my plan set up. I'm going to have a monthly in-person networking where we work on different aspects. And I'm really going to take the temperature of the audience and see what do they want to do next.
Nice.
I'm also having a monthly online workshop for those people who are not in Sarasota or can't make it. I heard from several of our sisters and they can't go out at night. They have kids, they have families, but maybe they could do a Zoom. So I'm working on some new Zoom workshops and networking events. And again, I'm taking the temperature of the audience there. So the one that I'm having in December, which is on the 12th, I'm having that one and we're going to discuss electronic communication for business. So emailing versus DMing versus texting, voice messaging on DMs, voice messaging on the phone, how to do it, because you can have the same message in 6 different places. They need to be different in some way in terms of length, in terms of vocabulary, in terms of formality. So we're going to navigate that and do a little experimenting with a message we want to send out. And we'll look at all of those aspects and how to do it best in each area.
Nice. Yeah, even among social media platforms, the tone is different, the style and delivery is different. Yeah,
Yes,
it can be
absolutely.
daunting for business owners and
Yes, I think well, I'm certainly an example of that because I didn't use social media until about a year and a half ago.
oh my gosh.
So I had to learn it all. And I went out and got coaches and teachers because I realized that if I was
Uh-huh.
going to try to do this myself, I was going down and going down fast. So, so like I said, I wish I'd had coaching or teaching about public speaking before I started my journey because it took me 15 years to get to where I was because I was doing it on my own.
Uh-huh.
When you have somebody who can guide you and lead you, things go way faster. So I worked with people to help me to learn how to do that. And I'm starting a course soon about how to use AI to help me to do that. Starts
Yes.
today, so I'm looking forward to that.
That's very good. Yeah, there are so many new tools and new tools become available all the time. Things
Yeah,
change, the algorithms shift.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's part of being a lifelong learner. And if you can
Mm-hmm.
open your mind, you can roll with it.
Right.
And if you think, but I learned that already, or I know, once we say I know, we block
Yeah.
ourselves off from learning more things.
Yeah.
And when we open our minds and say, oh, I didn't think of that, or oh, that's a different way to look at it, we give ourselves the opportunity to learn something that might be of value to us. Now, we don't have to take everything wholesale. You know that. I know that. I
Yeah.
get a lot of input from a lot of people, and I might say, oh, yes, this is something I'm going to embrace. This is something I'm going to either put on the back burner or no, that's not for me. But without the ability to open your mind and listen, you don't even have that opportunity.
Right. Right. You're either green and growing or dead and dying.
That is a beautiful way to put that. I never thought of it that way.
Yes, I
Yeah,
forget where I heard that, but yeah,
that's a good one. No, I like that.
like a
I'm going to keep that.
garden. Yeah.
That's
And,
awesome.
maybe we go through dormant times too, where we're
Yeah.
full.
Yes, I was talking about that with somebody recently, one of my coaches, because I'm working with two different coaches right now for my business, because remember,
Uh-huh.
this is all new to me. I need
Yeah.
someone to help me do the business part of it. The
Yeah.
communications part, I'm an expert. I
You
got that.
got it.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I got that. Not that I'm not still learning, but at least, my basic stuff, I can have a conversation. A lot of the business stuff is new to me. And like I said, I was on a call and I said, okay, I just hit saturation point. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be able to process any new information today.
Yeah.
Can we just stop and give me some like percolation time because I can feel myself shutting down.
Yeah. Yeah. That overwhelm starts to set in and you just need a
Yeah,
reset. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
just
get
need
that
a
way
day
too.
ready.
Yeah. Some days, you feel that it's fear. It's our brains trying to keep us safe and comfortable and not moving forward. But yeah, sometimes you just need a reset. So, take a deep breath, sit in silence for a moment, do a little meditation maybe, or just go outside and feel the sunshine on your face.
Yes, yes. And I think that's something that I've learned working for my own business because when I was at the college, I would walk from building to building between classes.
Nice.
And now I'm in the same room most of the day.
Yeah.
And so I
Yep.
have to build in mental health breaks. Like you said, I
Yeah.
go outside, I walk the dogs, I have a cup of tea, get some sun,
Yeah.
vitamin D for 3 minutes, something to restart me. And I meditate as well.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I love that. I feel like it's so important. It's like an exercise for your brain.
It really is, but it's not even and to me, it's an exercise, but it's also, I feel like if you've ever defragmented a computer, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that happens when I meditate. Like thoughts
And
are floating
untangling.
around, and I feel like everything's just sort of putting itself in order. And once it's in order, I'm like, and then
Yeah.
I can rejoin the living world.
Yes, exactly. That's a very good way to describe it. And an untangling of those thoughts and like seeing them and then, yeah, being able to breathe.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm. I love it. Okay, so I'm super excited to take your class on your workshop on Tuesday. And
Awesome.
I love your format for it. It's you're teaching and then we're practicing together
Mhm,
in a very non-threatening way
mhm.
and a very practical results oriented way. I love that.
Yeah, again, it's that muscle memory, right, Penny?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if I have you rewrite your elevator pitch, whatever we're going to call it, 30-second
Mm-hmm.
commercial, if I have you rewrite that, and what I found last time, which you're going to laugh, and when you're there, you might do this too. What we write looks good, and can we say it easily is not, it doesn't always translate into spoken language. Our
Right.
written language knows. So I wrote one that sounded so good, and when I tried to say it, I was like, "Bah, bah, bah, bah."
Uh-huh.
It
I can
didn't
relate.
flow. And so then I knew I had to rewrite it. And while I rewrite mine about monthly, just because I'm keeping myself engaged, I need to be interested in it. I need to feel excited to talk to you about what I'm talking about. And so what I said to you just today, when I said I work with female entrepreneurs to find their authentic voice and communicate with confidence, that's my latest one. It was like 7 or 8 words longer the first time I wrote it. And I couldn't say it in one breath. I was like, by the end of it, right? And so
Uh-huh.
part of the workshop is I have everybody at the same time say it out loud there. So nobody's listening to anybody. You're just saying it to see if it works in this vocal tract that we
Yeah.
have.
Uh-huh.
Does your tongue feel good with that? Does your throat, your lips, all of that, right? And if you
Hmm.
find yourself stuck, then maybe we want to change the verbiage.
Yeah.
And then when you do the speed networking after, I give you time to talk to each other about how it resonated,
Oh, that's great.
right? Because we don't always know how other people resonate with what we say. It feels good to us.
Uh-huh.
I
We
understand it.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah. But nobody else, because meanings are in people. And we have
Right.
embedded meanings and feelings about the words we use. So does somebody else understand it?
Right.
And
Right. We
so
might use
then
our like industry language too, like just the
jargon.
jargon. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And when we use jargon, that's great if you're in a group of people who are in your same field, but you
Yep.
probably don't need that phrasing anyway. You probably don't need to explain it to them. So again, we might have different language that we use in different settings, and that is communicatively competent people do. They know what words to use when they're with different people. I often use a really simplistic example, Penny, and one of them I might say is, if I'm with my 3-year-old nephew and I say to him, "Oh, do you need to go potty?" That's appropriate. Penny, if I say to you, "Do you need to go potty?" You think, "Oh, Victoria, what happened to you? Something's wrong. It don't work." Right? You're
I'd probably
laughing.
say, "Oh, you get me so much."
Okay, yeah. But it's true. We understand the language that we use in normal conversation. However, when we get into a more formal situation, we choke sometimes because we
Mhm.
haven't practiced it, we haven't thought about it. So it's a way for you to construct a new phrasing that you're interested in, that you resonates with you, and then test it out on people, learn your muscle memory, and kind of feel it out. And you might get feedback from somebody who says, "Yeah, I love that." And then somebody else might say, "I don't understand."
Right.
But
Right.
it's good to know.
Very good. That's great feedback. It's all interpreting data and not using your emotion to guide. I mean, we have a great intuition, especially as women. I feel like we really, we can, we can intuit a lot of things, but then verify it with data and with feedback.
Yes, what also it's that open-mindedness, it's that beginner's mind
Yes.
to allow for feedback without feeling defensive. So
Right.
if I create a learning environment, and it's funny because I was at a networking event yesterday and people kept calling it a class, and I kept saying, it's not a class, it's a workshop. But they felt like it was a class because they were open to learning. And I really think that's indicative of the
Ah.
feeling they got. So it was a place of experimentation and acceptance,
Mhm.
right? In a class, we expect to learn and we expect to be wrong. So if you want to call it a class, that's fine. I call it a workshop. Again, this is that nomenclature. However, on the other hand, if we can say to ourselves, "I'm going to get feedback and I'm open to it because I want to rock the 30-second commercial
Right.
time I go to an event. So I'm going to really listen to everything everyone says to me." And again, you don't take everything wholesale. You might say to somebody, "I could see how you'd feel that way. I think I'm still going to stick with it."
Right.
If
Right.
9 out of 10 people say it rocks, I might stick with it.
Right.
If 9 out of 10 people say, "I have no idea what you're talking about," you
It's
want to work
time to
on
go
that.
back to the drawing
Yes,
board.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, it's to take the emotion out of it. The easiest way for me is to think, okay, this isn't about me. It's, I'm telling you what I do or who I am or how I serve.
Yes.
But the ultimate is I'm serving you, or that's my goal is to serve you. So you tell me, does it work? Is that beneficial to you? Do you hear, are you understanding what how I'm trying to serve you? And what is that what you need? What do you need
Yeah.
that's different than what I'm saying? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's for me, that's very helpful to think of what's my end purpose here. And that's to serve others. So not to be, I'm doing this thing now.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the king of the world. And it's
Yeah.
about pulling the ego out.
Yeah.
And it's also about understanding that the workshop is the workshop. When you're in a truly professional situation where you're talking to a potential client,
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I want to be asking them if they like my 30-second commercial.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't want to have that to happen. However, I might say, let's pretend I'm doing it again, and I say to you, Penny, I help female entrepreneurs to find their authentic voice and step into their confidence. You know, what do you think about that? I'm giving you an opening to question me,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And so you might say, well, what does that mean, find their authentic voice? And then that gives me an opportunity to explain that to you.
Right. Right.
Another thing I do, although it's not necessarily with the 30-second commercial or whatever, if I'm at a presentation, let's say I'm presenting to a group of people, one of my goals is to work with the different hospitality industries here to help their employees to communicate in a way that's effective, because I think that's a valuable resource.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah.
And so if I'm speaking to a group of people, and even with my students, because I still teach part-time on Zoom, which is really fun, at the end of my statement, I will say, was I clear in explaining that? And if I wasn't, how can I help you to understand? I never say, do you understand? Because that's what's the onus of responsibility on them. And and that creates a defensive climate.
Right.
So
Right.
I take responsibility for the clarity.
That's amazing. It's human.
But it's an open hearing
Yes.
versus a closed fist. Like, did you
Exactly.
understand? It feels very attacking,
Yeah.
like
There's
knowing
a
to
big
know.
difference.
Yeah. And people don't
Oh,
like to say they don't understand.
no. No. That's yeah, it doesn't feel good.
It
And if it
doesn't feel
doesn't feel
good.
good, yeah, that's not in service if it doesn't feel good.
Do you want to hear a funny story about that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I've been to grad school a couple of times and I started a new program when I got back to New York. So I had a linguistics degree, but not a communications degree. And I wanted to be able to do communications. So I went to grad school and we began our first class. We were the first cohort at Hofstra University for the rhetoric program. And our professor, Professor Sobnosky, I'll never forget him. Love that guy. If you ever get to take a class with him, please do it. He is the most eloquent and erudite and kicking vocabulary dude I've ever met. He was using words I had never heard before. Now I'm well read, but I didn't know what was going on. So there's 9 of us in this class, all graduate students, all professionals already in the industry. And he said something, and I raised my hand and I said, Professor Sobnosky, I don't know what that word means. And the rest of them went, oh. And so he explained it to me. He's going on, and I said, Professor Sobnosky, I don't know what that word means. They're looking at me and he explains it to me. It happened 7 or 8 times during this 3-hour class that he used vocabulary I didn't know. And I am comfortable enough saying I don't understand because I'm perfectly okay with that. So the class ends and I leave the class, the professor leaves, and all the students come up to me and they're like, thank God you asked. None of us knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And yet they would not have asked.
Yeah.
So that's that fear, that filter that blocks us from
Right.
asking. So if then I thought, well, if I'm in an educator position, if I'm going to flip the script, now I'm going to be the teacher, now I'm going to
Uh-huh.
be the coach, I need to open the floor. And that was how I came up with that phrasing. I thought, how can I invite people to ask? And that was where that came from.
Nice. I thought maybe he was messing with you for a minute.
No, he has. And to listen to this man talk is to listen to poetry for 3 hours. I mean, what a
Wow.
beautiful speaker. He's just so academic.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, when you
Yeah.
talk to academicians, they often use what I call the $30, $40 words. I
Yeah. Oh,
don't
yeah.
generally, because I feel like I block people out by doing that. I know a lot of words, but I don't know all the words, but I don't use them very much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one thing to read a text and understand what you're reading. It's another to use it in everyday language.
Yeah, yeah, in a conversation. And it was a classroom and it was a place to be educated.
Yeah. Yep.
And I understand that. And I have no problem with the language that he used because I learned so much from this man, both
Hmm.
vocabulary and about rhetoric and about being that kind of an educator that, is
Yeah.
linguistics, which is very sciencey. And I think it's also important to realize that in different situations, just like I don't generally say to my adult friends, do you need to go potty? I don't use really, really complicated vocabulary in a general conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was in corporate a long time, and I just am more casual than that. And just, I don't know, I use everyday language and, love to be stretched, but I'm not going to use a $30 word if a $5 one will work.
I'm completely in agreement with you. I think that when we speak, if our goal is for the other person to understand us, then it's not about us, it's about them.
That's right. That's right.
So, I mean, if you
Yeah.
just want to hear yourself talk, stay home talking to me around. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to your kitty.
My dogs sleep when I talk. I don't know what that means.
They love the sound of your voice.
I'm so soothing.
Yes, exactly. Oh, mama's home. Oh gosh. Well, what have I not asked you that you would love to share with my audience?
What have you not asked me? Goodness gracious. Well, one of the things that I thought it would be interesting to speak to your audience about, because you're, penny for your shots, right? And one thing I have worked with many clients on is social interaction and
Ah,
how to be comfortable in a social situation. So can I give a tip about that?
sure.
Okay. So I've worked with many people who are uncomfortable at parties. And I think parties, networking events, parties, cocktail hour, things like that. Not that you have to drink at them, because I don't usually drink if I go to a networking event. I drink an iced tea. I don't drink a cocktail. I drink a mocktail, or I drink something like that. That's my personal choice. However, to learn how to navigate that particular kind of social thing is daunting to many people, because you're walking to a room of people you mostly don't know.
Right.
And so how can we make it easier and comfortable for ourselves? So I have a several step process that I'll go through very quickly, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Okay. So the first time I started to do this, I was with my husband, who's in the corporate world, works for a big bank, JP Morgan Chase, and I would go to these networking events where there were hundreds of people. Now, I'm excellent in the classroom, I'm excellent as a teacher, but put me in a room full of 300 people I don't know, and I'm supposed to make small talk with them. I want to go home. I want to read a book.
Yeah.
I'm hiding in the bathroom. So what I started to do was I went with him to all the different things, and I just started to observe what the conversations were about. So I went to one or two events where I didn't feel like I needed to talk to anybody, or I just introduced myself. And I realized what they generally talked about outside of work, which I couldn't speak about, was their sporting events, popular culture things, and things that were happening around town. So then, after I went to one or two events, I started to study. I made like a little list of things. So I'd watch some news. I don't generally watch TV. I'd watch some news. My husband and I started watching two programs that were very popular, so I could talk to them about that. And I would choose one or two things that were happening in the community. So I'd go in like with a cheat sheet, like a post-it note of these 3 or 4 items that I could talk about.
Uh-huh.
And so I would say, okay, on the first one, I'm going to talk to one new person, and I'm going to try to incorporate one of these things.
Oh, wow.
That was my goal. So I went in and I was successful. And the next time I said, okay, now I'm going to talk to 2 people. And now I can do it. But we often think that we should be able to go to some social event and become the life of the party out of the gate.
Oh,
Now, I'm still not the life of the party, but I am comfortable.
yeah. You want to be
I,
when you're comfortable, you can get out of your head and just have a
yes,
conversation and get to know
yes.
someone.
Yes. So the first couple of times you kind of go in as the observer, like an alien in a foreign land, and think like, what do these people normally talk about? What do they
Mm-hmm.
do?
Just
How
get
do they do
curious.
it? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
get curious. And I think that makes going to networking events, I think it makes going to parties so much less intimidating.
Hmm.
And it's
That's a
like a
really good
plan.
tip. Yeah. That's very interesting. When you said you had a tip for networking events, back in my corporate days, I didn't know anything about wine. I didn't know anything about golf, but I realized in my corporate job that you needed to know how to order a wine at dinner, and you needed to go out, if you wanted to make connections, you were out on the golf course. because that's where all the guys that were in my
Yeah.
industry were.
Yeah.
There were
Yeah.
very few women. So I learned to golf and learned about wine because I needed to be able to converse about
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Hmm.
not everything's going to be natural. Communication skills are not natural. I learned everything you're seeing today. If you'd met me when I was 20, I would never be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's so many things we can learn. And if we see it as an experiment and an adventure and an exploratory mission, it feels better. If we think, oh, I should do this, I should be able to speak, I'm this old, I should be better at this, then we're beating ourselves up and you're never going to do it
Yeah.
because it
Well,
feels
you've
bad.
probably heard the phrase, don't shit all over yourself.
I never heard that. I like that one too.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a good
Mm,
one. Yeah,
yeah. It doesn't do you
yeah,
any good and it
yeah.
doesn't serve your people. So yeah.
Mhm.
No, get
Yeah.
curious.
Get
Yeah.
curious, get open, get playful.
Yes,
You know,
exactly. Exactly. Okay, so here comes the question.
there's a question. I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the cocktail? Did you or
So,
what's in it? And let's dissect it.
okay, so I am a wine and beer drinker for the
Okay.
most part. And
Great.
I love Prosecco a little too much sometimes. So I have to really
Girl,
put the brakes on. But
that's
one
my
of my
jam.
favorite cocktails with Prosecco, which I learned is called a Kir Royale with the Chambord in it. I
Yes.
love raspberry. And then
Mm.
if you add chocolate on the side of that, it's like the best thing that ever hit the planet.
You are my people.
So I learned what that was called. Yeah, and it's very interesting because I've tried many different Prosecco's and some I really like and some I don't. And I think
Yeah.
it's just like anything that you like or don't like, just because something's called a Prosecco doesn't mean you're necessarily going to like it. And I also like Cabernets. And I still don't know
Oh,
the name of the one I like, but if I ever
oh, that's
find
okay.
figured,
Well, yeah, I'd be happy to noodle that
yeah.
with you someday. And
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
so those are my beverages of choice
I
outside of
love
tea
it.
and water.
I love it. Absolutely wonderful. Prosecco is my jam too. It's my go-to.
It's so celebratory.
Yes. And it's not expensive. You can enjoy it on a Tuesday.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also, as like my feeling is my husband is a cocktail dude. He loves all
Yeah.
the different cocktails, like an old fashioned or a gin and tonic or some of these really fruity sweet drinks. And I feel sometimes some of them you're drinking a meal.
Yes, they're heavy or can
Yeah.
be.
And a glass of Prosecco doesn't make it so I can't eat dessert.
Right. Right. Light and airy. Yeah, and they're lower alcohol too, so that's also a very good thing. Or
Yeah.
I feel it is a lovely thing.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. And
Yeah.
everybody's got their thing. I don't have any judgments against what people drink or
Yeah.
don't drink.
Yeah, me
I know
too.
what I like. And one of
Yeah.
my sisters was a distributor for a huge spirits company. And she was saying how when they do blind taste tests, often people pick the less expensive wines because that's what they like. So just because something's
Oh,
expensive doesn't mean you're going to like it
right. Or that it's better.
or that it's better. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean, in some cases, yeah, but it's not all price determinant.
no, it's palate determinant.
That's right. What you like is good,
Absolutely.
for
Absolutely.
sure. Thank you so much, Victoria. This has been so fun.
Oh, thank you. What a joy to be invited and to talk to somebody. And your energy is so awesome. So I think that
Oh,
helped me to feel positive and energetic as well.
oh gosh, thank you. That's wonderful. It's a great, I take that. It felt like a hug. So if someone wants to get involved with your workshops or check those out, because there are people listening around the country and maybe they could get in on the Zoom ones if they're not local to us.
For sure. Or they could visit Sarasota because it's a really nice place
It's
to come.
beautiful. Come see me.
Absolutely. So, well, I'm on Facebook and all of my things I advertise on Facebook. So Victoria Chai or Chai Connections Coaching and Consulting. I also have a Facebook group that they might want to join where I do video tips and things like we talked about today, but in a much shorter, in a
Yeah.
shorter format. And that's the Communication Sandbox where you come and play.
Oh, how fun. The Communication Sandbox.
Sandbox.
And
Yeah.
that's a public group they can find on Facebook.
They can find it. You need to join. Yeah,
Yes,
but
but it's
it's public in that
discoverable.
you'd be able to see it. Yes. And I
Okay.
also advertise all my stuff on Facebook in events. So
Okay.
under my under my name Victoria Chai, they can see that there, as well as I also shoot it out to the different networking groups in Sarasota.
Cool. Okay. And in case someone is listening to this as a podcast rather than watching on YouTube, Chai is spelled Chai,
Like the tea.
like the tea. How appropriate.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much, Victoria. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a wrap on another spirited episode of Penny for Your Shots, Conversations and Cocktails with Brilliant Women. I hope you've enjoyed the intoxicating blend of wisdom, wit, and wonder that these incredible women bring to the table. Check out the show notes for links to resources referenced in today's episode. And remember to subscribe and raise a glass with me every Thirsty Thursday as we continue to serve up inspiration, celebrate resilience, and reignite the passions that set our souls on fire. If you've loved what you've heard, please share the podcast far and wide and leave a sparkling 5-star review to let me know your thoughts. It would also help tremendously if you would visit pennyforyourshots.com and subscribe to learn when new episodes are available and pick up my free recipe. In the meantime, remember that your story deserves to be served and savored. Cheers to your brilliance and of women everywhere. Until next time, keep sipping and experiencing life's extraordinary moments. This is Penny for Your Shots, signing off with a clink and a toast to us. Cheers.